Hello, friends. Welcome to this edition of the Get Cyber Smart podcast, your 7 to 10 minute educational look into this crazy thing we call cyber. And this episode is module 2 of my Protecting Seniors Online. This particular episode will deal with who are the bad guys that are targeting seniors. So as always, I want to thank you for either dropping in on my live stream, which I'm starting to do now more with all of my podcast stuff is going to be live stream going forward. Hopefully, if I can, figure it out accurately enough. And so I am messing around with a bunch of stuff here in Restream. So if I'm looking off to the side, I'm kind of doing multiple things here. I'm a one-man shop, obviously. So again, I appreciate you all coming in. And so for this first... Well, it's not really first. For this particular podcast, we're going to talk about who are the bad guys targeting seniors, largely because seniors are probably the most targeted group, in the cyber community. And so this particular module is kind of short. If you remember how I'm doing these series of things is taking a look at who is targeting victims, how they're targeting, why they're targeting, how to protect yourself, and how to proceed wisely. So before I get into this module, one thing I want to do with the live stream, because I've had issues with my audio in the past, I have both of my live streams up on another screen. I just want to make sure the audio is working. It is, because there I am talking. So I know that my audio is working, so that's good. So again, for those of you who are listening to the podcast, I appreciate your patience as I go through with this. So let's go ahead and bring up my PowerPoint for this. Okay, so this particular module, I want to talk about who are the bad guys targeting seniors. And so this is probably be the shortest of these particular modules, simply because talking about who they are is pretty simple. I'm going to give some examples of my time in the FBI when I dealt with seniors and then the crimes that impacted them. But so who is targeting seniors? Well, it's going to be, if you take a look at a pyramid of threats, you have at the bottom level, you have your entry level cyber script kiddies and stuff, going all the way up to cyber crime, cyber criminals, to your nation state actors. And so who is targeting seniors? Well, I'll be honest with you, China, Russia, Iran, the nation state entities within those countries are probably not really targeting seniors, but it's the cyber criminals primarily. And so that kind of categorize these into a couple different buckets. First one is obvious for everybody who's probably listening, because you've all had experience with this, and these are the scammers. These are people who are trying to trick seniors through technology to basically giving the scammer personal information that would obviously allow the scammer to get access to the senior's bank account, get access to their email account, a whole variety of different things. And the scammers run the gamut of different types of scammers. And probably if you look at the next couple items of who are the scammers, chances are pretty good that these are scammers as well. So you have organized cyber crime groups who either have their own hackers internally that they hire and they use to scam seniors, or they use them, they outsource their requirements to other hackers to get the information they want through a variety of different means. I mean, we're going to talk about the how next week. We're talking lottery scams and things like that. So the how is coming, but for right now, we just want to understand who is targeting seniors. Because again, as I see in all my podcasts, if you understand who the threats are, you can assess your risk, proceed wisely. So first part of this learning is who is it we have to worry about. So beyond the scammers and the organized cyber crime groups, you have telemarketing boiler rooms. These are going to be, the phone calls you get saying, hey, I'm from the Internal Revenue Service. The one I'm getting right now, and chances are, if you're listening, you've probably gotten it too. I get it like once a day, and it's from some diabetic entity, probably trying to sell me fake insulin or get information about buying insulin, thinking that they're talking to someone who's diabetic, but I am not diabetic. I keep telling them to stop calling me because I'm not diabetic, but I keep getting the calls anyway. So that's probably a current scam you may be getting, either through phone calls or through text messages, through emails, a host of different things. The IRS one is another common one. And as we get into now, we're into 2023, and as we move towards tax season, you're going to see a big increase in these kind of boiler rooms using Internal Revenue Service and things like that to scare seniors into giving them information. And then you have cyber mercenaries. These are just individuals looking to steal personal identifiable information that they can sell on the dark web. Doesn't necessarily mean they care if it's a senior. They're certainly looking for information from anybody who can steal their information. But, obviously the most vulnerable group is going to be your seniors, because, they are not as savvy with technology per se as those in Gen X, Gen Y, millennials, things like that. So they're more likely to be trusting of individuals who they call or who they get emails from. Obviously one of the big email scams is, hey, your McAfee or your Norton antivirus has been re-upped for another year at $400. Call this number if you want a refund. That's a common one going on all the time. And so if you call that number, then you end up giving them information, giving them access to a computer, and then they can get all sorts of stuff off of the computer. Again, we're going to talk about the how they do it and the why they do it in coming weeks. So a couple of stats just to be aware of when it comes to these scammers targeting seniors. This is from the Internet Crime Complaints Center 2021 Cyber Crime Report. So for the 60 plus age group, there were 92,371 reported victims in 2021. The 2022 report will come out later this year. And my guess is that number will be higher. And this is across all sorts of different type of scams, be it romance scams, investment scams. Again, these are the scams we'll talk about next week, the how they do it. But for right now, just understand that this is why this group is so heavily targeted, because again, bad guys are going to go where the money is. Seniors have more money if they're at retirement age for the most part. So that they're going to where the money is. The amount of loss in 2021 from this age group solely, $1.68 billion in losses. And keep in mind, this is reported losses. These are just people who have reported to IC3 they were victims of some kind of cybercrime. There's certainly going to be a host of other individuals who will also targeted who, didn't report it because they felt shamed. They didn't want anyone to know they'd been victimized. So they're afraid to report it. I had a case in Cleveland where a lady came in. She had gotten an email saying that she had won a lottery in Scotland. And she had ultimately passed along to the scammer $200,000 before someone said, hey, I don't think that's right. And they brought her to the FBI office. But by the time that she got to us, it was unfortunately too late for us to really do anything for her. So these are the three top cybercrime types for seniors. Romance fraud, number one. Obviously, you're going to have a lot of widows and widowers in this group. And so, everybody goes looking for love online, and some find it, and some find romance fraud where they end up, unfortunately sending money because of $956 million in reported romance fraud loss in 2021. Again, 2022, that number is probably going to break the 1 billion mark. It'd be great, really, if banks, and some banks do this, recognize that when seniors come in to do a wire transfer, that it's likely that it might be a scam, and hopefully they're taking means to stop it from happening, but doesn't always happen. Tech support fraud. This is, again, the McAfee, the Norton antivirus. Hey, call this number to get your money back. And then they end up having the senior or having whoever the scammer is. The tech support fraud doesn't necessarily have to be senior. I'm just saying these are the most highly targeted group. But the tech support fraud is when you end up downloading a remote access tool onto your device. And these are legitimate tools. You go to legitimate websites to download because they have legitimate purposes. But the bad guy is making you download it and then telling you to give them the password and the code to log in. They then get access to the computer and they can suck in all sorts of information from that. And then lottery fraud, $71 million in loss to that. And then there's other, obviously, types of scams. There's real estate scams. And we'll talk more in depth as to these scams next week when we talk about, how they're doing it. And ideally, like I've said before, the purpose of doing this series is to kind of give you just a general idea, because the whole Get Cyber Smart plan is really to get an idea of, just a little cyber 101 as to understanding certain concept within the cyber world. I try to keep these particular episodes short. This will ultimately, hopefully, lead to a much larger conversation down the road with a whole class on how to protect seniors online, but that's coming down the pike. So as always, here is my contact information. If you would like to email me, feel free to do so. Darren at the Cyber Guy. You can follow me on my Cyber Smart YouTube channel. That's kind of new. So if you go there, please click subscribe so that I know people are actually looking at these videos or watching them. Follow me on LinkedIn. I post stuff almost daily on certain different topics, and hopefully those people find those helpful. Also, you can follow this and my Cyber Guy podcast on all your favorite podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, so on. The live stream will be on LinkedIn. It'll be on YouTube. I've upgraded the Restream subscription I have, so hopefully the video is a little clearer than it has been in the past. If not, I'm going to be really ticked off that Restream is screwing me on that. But that's a topic for another day. So with that, know that as you go through your week, understand the threats that are targeting you. If you do so, you can assess your risk online, and then you can proceed wisely. Thanks so much for dropping in. If you watch this podcast live, or if you or this live stream live, or if you watched it later, I appreciate it. If you are downloading the podcast, thank you so much for that. I'll be back later in the week with a new episode of the CyBUr podcast. Thanks so much. We will talk to you soon.